Hi, welcome to Storytime. I'm Dr. Jennifer Bird. I'm a biblical scholar, and I care very much about what people do with what they find in the Bible. Thus, the Storytime, reading through biblical passages with my feminist, materialist, post-colonial critique of what's going on in these scriptures, um, or what we're doing today, which is having a conversation with a scholar. And I am I'm just gonna throw this up there. It's really sweet. Yeah, right. We have a really delightful human on with us today here in just a minute. So before we get to that, I just want to say thank you. I'm so grateful. There's some people who are available today, wanted to be here, able to be here, all that kind of stuff, joining us live. And for anyone who's watching this later, I appreciate that you're interested in what I'm doing here, and would love it if you would give me a like, subscribe to the channel, tell a friend about one of the videos, whatever. I want to give Ryan Coltastic a shout out. Thank you for helping me with promoting the work that I do. I appreciate that. And I just had memberships open up recently. So if you're interested in that kind of support as well, those are an option, very, widely priced. So, and I'm pleased to say that my latest book, Marriage in the Bible, What Do the Texts Say, is available in audio. I did the recording and the editing of that, and I'm now able to share it, which is really fun. I'm not sure when Francesca Stavrokopoulou is going to be able to join me. So that's kind of indefinitely put off for probably actually in the summer due to various personal things going on. So she was going to be here next week, but I don't think that's going to happen now. So anyway, so we'll be back to reading through Acts next week, picking up where we left off. And also, if you're not already familiar, I have been, I do think this is so fun. You're like backstage doing it. I love this. Thank you, Digital Hammurabi. She is amazing, right? Having this conversation with Digital Hammurabi, also the one recently with Robin Walsh was really fun. And yeah, Francesca, I'm looking forward to that. So, but also, if you're interested in more sounds, audio things to listen to, podcasts, in addition to the ones we're going to talk about today, I have been doing a series called a podcast called Wild Olive, Game-Changing Conversation about literature, culture, and the Bible. Been doing that with a literature professor, and she's been teaching the Bible as literature for 25 years. And so we have really fun conversations. We have 3 seasons. That's what I was trying to say earlier. 3 seasons about that. We're getting ready to start the 4th season on dreams in the biblical texts, bringing in all kinds of theory, ideas about dreams, and all kinds of cultural theory to help us understand that. So you can find that anywhere you get podcasts, Wild Olive. And that is, this is one of my favorite comments. That's awesome. I know that feeling, right? If only we could sit down, you'd be fun. You'd be a fun friend to have. So that's it for what's coming up here. And I am going to do a quick little introduction of Megan Lewis. Although I think potentially most of the people that are following me came to me through having heard about me at Digital Hammurabi or over at Myth Vision. And so you probably are better familiar with her than I am. But let me go ahead and give this delightful human a brief introduction, Megan Lewis. She does have a BA from Birmingham University in ancient history, though I just learned that she first earned a general art diploma and then began a silversmithing degree before she switched over to ancient history. That's kind of a fun little thing. And that gives you a little bit of a peek into the things I learned about her just in our kind of preliminary stuff. Then she went on to earn a master's in Assyriology and a Master of Arts in Near Eastern Studies. Just want to talk about the fact that that's all before PhD work. So then both of those were from Johns Hopkins University. And as I learned recently from interviewing Josh Bowen, that she did all of the coursework and wrote, I think it was 4 chapters of a dissertation. And in this field, you're probably not going to have more than 6 chapters. So this was one of the things I'm eager to talk about with Megan. What happened there? Because that's That is the closest I've heard of people getting to being complete and then not being able to complete. So anyway, really, really impressive amount of work she has done. And the other thing about that I, am a fangirl of, fan of, is the way that she has chosen to simply make her knowledge available. And that is through Digital Hammurabi, which I imagine many of you are also followers of. The YouTube channel, there's also a podcast. Those are linked at the top of the chat here in this video, also in the description. But she's also the host of one of the many things that Bart Ehrman is up to, Misquoting Jesus with Bart Ehrman, a podcast. And if you're not already familiar with that podcast, it talks about some of the really interesting, fascinating, little-known facts, right, about early Christianity, the Newer Testament, historical Jesus, those kinds of things. So there are links to all of these podcasts and websites at the top of the chat here for today. So that's what I have to say about Megan, and let's go ahead and bring her on. Megan Lewis, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Jennifer. This is really, really exciting.
Thank you. You covered up your tattoo.
I know, I got chilly. I'll probably take it off. I overheat when I do interviews, so I'm sure it'll
come off. Okay. I was like, that was kind of fun. That was showing. Okay. And I don't always do this, but I'm going to comment on your necklace. I don't normally
Thank you.
Yeah. Is that
It was my grandmother's. It's a little brass snake.
It is a snake. Yeah.
I loved it when I was a child. And she passed a couple of years ago. So that was one of the things I took to remember her.
Yes. A nice way to connect to her. Yeah. Lovely. It sounds similar to some of the things we were talking about before in terms of our body art, the inspiration for it all. Yes. So you're a very busy woman, and running many things, taking care of many things, many realms of life. But I'm having you here to talk about you, and in particular, who you are as a person, the things that have gone into shaping you, and whatever amount of that you are comfortable talking about. So I know that a lot of people are a fan of what you do and who you are as a scholar. So I like to talk about the ideological pieces of that, the background, like who are we? And in a sense, doing kind of a modern biography, or a modern version of an ancient biography, right? What are the influences that you can see early on that help explain what she's doing now? I don't do a great job, by the way, of paying attention to chat while we're talking. But if you want to, you're welcome to redirect us to that if you want. But I'm here for the chat with you, and I look at the chat later. So anyway, what would you like to tell us about yourself? You in terms of things that help us understand why you do what you do.
Oh gosh.
That was I phrased the question differently than I did in the email. So let me reroute it then. Let me go back. When I said, what were some of the early influences in your life? You shared a really cool collection of things, right? You shared with me, I'm just going to pull up a couple pictures here. You shared with me, it's funny how they go in a different order when it's in your share. You probably know what I'm talking about. You said you were influenced by Anne McCaffrey.
Yes.
And she has an impressive collection. She seems to be a fairly prolific writer.
I can't claim to have read all of hers, but
sure.
I read a lot when I was a teenager.
Okay, we'll start there, right? And then we have I used to work at a Barnes & Noble, actually. And so when you mentioned, who was it? There was someone else you mentioned. Oh, no, you mentioned Redwall. And I thought, I don't know. I never read any of that, but I did know the name because he's also was quite prolific, right? Brian Jacques, very, very well-known, well appreciated. I'm going to come back over here. And then you also shared some of the classics, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, right? Xena. And I don't know why, that just made me giggle with delight. I was like, okay, I love that these are some of the early influences in your world.
So I have always been a huge bookworm, massive fan of all things fantasy and science fiction. And I just love a really good narrative. And I also I haven't read regularly for such a long time that I suspect I'm a bit slower now, but I used to read
Yes.
incredibly quickly.
Uh-huh.
So I
Uh-huh.
read a lot.
Yeah.
And the reason I kind of hesitated when you asked is because I don't necessarily find it easy to draw connections between the things that I was passionate about when I was like a kid and a teenager and the work that I find myself doing today. I'm sure there are threads. I'm sure there is influence in there. It's not a frame that I've necessarily looked at before. So I'm like,
Huh?
I don't know. I loved all of these things and they were amazing and wonderful, but how on earth it relates to what I do, I don't have a good answer for.
Ah, okay. Well, I think there is a thread there. But I think you also kind of named it in the email when you said, no wonder I took to some of these fantastic stories in the ancient world, right?
Yeah.
It was right up your alley. And then you as a person, so I don't know anything about your background. I know very little, I should say, about your background, in terms of your upbringing and the belief systems that you had. Yeah, I wonder if there's something about that, like the kind of the coming together of your love of the good narrative, the sci-fi, which is kind of what these ancient stories and myths are, right?
Yeah. And I guess I really enjoy being immersed in other places, other cultures, other worlds. And that definitely does speak to my enthusiasm for ancient texts, especially ancient letters. And I talk about these, like if people listen to my interviews, if letters come up, I'm like, I love ancient letters. They're the best thing ever. And I do, because it really helps put you in that place,
In
in that
context.
culture. Yeah, exactly. So there are definite threads there.
Yeah. So can you say more about your interest in ancient letters? Like what it is that you do like about them? Is there something you can light for others about what's interesting about them?
I think so much of what we know and what is taught about the ancient world is based on the people in charge, the elites, the kings, the queens, the priests. And it's the same for every ancient culture I've studied, and for a lot of the pre-modern cultures, because so much literacy has been for so long intrinsically bound to wealth and social status.
Right.
Because to learn to read and write, you have to have the financial freedom to do so. You can't be
Mhm.
laboring in a field all day and then go
Exactly.
to school.
The
You have to.
leisure of being able
Yeah,
to learn.
exactly,
Mhm.
exactly.
Mhm.
So much of what we have is solely related to elite people. And one of the things I really enjoy about Assyriology in Mesopotamia is that we have these letters, yes, mostly from elites,
Right.
but
Right.
also from, like, I guess what we'd call the middle class,
Mhm.
and getting that little glimpse into their lives and what they're concerned about and who they're writing to and why they're writing to them, and then
Mhm.
reconstructing all like the family dynamics and
Mhm.
the social structure and all that stuff is so interesting. um yeah, I just really enjoy it.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm working on a video on making sense of Paul, 4 more things I wish everyone knew about Paul. And in doing so, I'm looking at some of the religious traditions that
Mm-hmm.
he draws upon for his ideas about Jesus as, salvific. And of course that, as you know, all these different things are all connected, and going down
Mm-hmm.
this little lovely dive in looking at a source book on women's religions in Greco-Roman world. And of course, all these similar, right? Epitaphs or letters and the ways that people communicate with each other. Guess what? Not very different than the way we do today. Right? I mean, anyway, so I appreciate your comment about your love for letters, because differently today than I would have on another day. I think I'm like, yeah, there's something kind of humbling or connective about it, right?
Mm. Yeah, it feels, and I feel this more and more keenly being in a country that isn't my own, away from my family. There's something very grounding about reading ancient letters and seeing that actually people are people are people are people, and we have the same worries, the same thoughts, the same core values in a lot of ways. I genuinely think there's more connecting us than there is dividing us. It's just really hard sometimes to find those connections.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm wondering, Megan, so you said you don't, and it's okay, I'm not going to dwell on this, but I think it was really fun for me to learn some things about you, like your interest in not just in the arts, but like your time in musical theater and like the very strong artistic piece of your life, right? I mean, choirs, like a circus club. Can we talk about the circus? I don't know. What is the social club? A circus? Is that what you called it? I'm like, what?
Yeah. So when I was in Birmingham for my undergraduate and my first master's degree, the university had a whole bunch of societies, like universities, colleges everywhere. And one of them was the Circus Society. And that sounds amazing.
Doesn't it?
So I went to a meeting as a freshman, found some amazing people, absolutely loved it, and just stayed for the whole time I was there. Learned to juggle. I did a bit of fire spinning and ended up in my second year, I think, being the president, which sounds very, very fancy. It's mostly administrative, but it was a lot of fun.
And, making sure the club runs or whatever, but still. I don't know many people who've done that, is my, you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah. And may I ask your cat's name? I'm probably heard
this is Barley.
Barley. Okay. So pretty. I'm glad.
He is lovely. He is currently digging his claws into my shoulder, which is less lovely. And he'll probably headbutt the mic at some point. So apologies in advance to everyone listening. He's very affectionate and likes rubbing his face on anything that stays still.
Yes.
So that includes the mic.
And it does. And I understand that. Yeah. Love that he's here. There was, so I had my next question for you kind of, and then I got distracted by the cat. So just the artistic side of things. I don't know. I think that there is something about that. Some of my favorite students have always been those in the theater because of their ability to think outside the box and like live outside the box, if you will, like if we're going to use that metaphor at all, right? Their appreciation of diversity and of richness of culture and expression. And so I don't know. I guess I think I just somewhat assume that that's a piece of your work, but maybe it doesn't feel the same. There's a connection there the way I'm imagining.
I genuinely don't know. I've always, all throughout high school, college, I drew obsessively, and I've played music for, decades. And like you said, singing and choir, and then I was in, for those who are familiar, a Gilbert and Sullivan Society, which is light opera. Which again sounds very fancy, but is mostly hilarious.
Yes, it is, right? Which again is some fun things about you.
So there's a lot of creativity and expressiveness and I don't know, just joy in making something, especially with the musical side of things with a group of other people. So I mean that there we've got the whole connectivity thing again, and the importance of community and building something with other people, which is probably leads into the scholarship, the public scholarship that Josh and I do with Digital Hammurabi. It was a bit of a surprise when I went into academia. Not a huge surprise, but I'd always wanted to be an artist. So it was a surprise to me. It wasn't a surprise to my mother, but it was a surprise to me. You're muted, Jennifer.
I am sorry if there was a musical interlude that just happened a second ago. It didn't. Okay. Things got a little crazy on my end technologically. Okay, so now we're getting into the thing I do want to talk about, which is you said it wasn't a surprise to your mom that you became an academic, but it was to you. So can you tell us about that? What's like? what did she know about you or see about you that you weren't really aware of?
I think so I've always, as well as the artistic thing, I've always loved history and writing and, again, reading.
Mhm.
And when I was in school academically, it was pretty clear that I was always grabbed by or most excited about assignments that involved some level of research or
Mhm.
like a more critical examination
Mhm.
of source material and stuff like that.
Mhm.
It just made sense to her.
That you found your way there
Yeah.
eventually. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. When Josh was on, he did share a little bit of a story with us, the people here who are watching, about how you two met. Again,
Which one?
I know, right? Well, there is
The
that.
library?
Yes.
Yeah.
And he did say, there I am mansplaining the library to this woman who's in PhD work.
He mansplained the library. He was really sweet, and honestly, as a brand new PhD student,
Yeah.
in a new country, it was actually really helpful to have someone walk me through where the books that I personally would need were going to be. He's always very self-deprecating about the whole thing, but I was genuinely thankful that he did that.
Isn't that lovely? Yeah. Yeah. And I appreciate that side of him too, trying to be sensitive to what he
Yeah.
may have been clueless to in his past or whatever, but it was a fun story.
Yeah.
Yeah. So why Assyriology? I mean, obviously you were into ancient history, lots of work and time there, but like what initially got you to your master's in Assyriology, and then what is the
Well,
hook there for you?
so my undergraduate degree, as you said, was ancient history generally, which involved classics. I did classics in high school as well, so it involved classics, Egyptology, Assyriology, and some archaeology.
Okay.
And when it came, I always wanted to be, well, once I got into the ancient history program, I wanted to be a classicist because of the ancient myth thing.
Yes.
And when it came time for me to write my undergraduate dissertation, my dissertation advisor, the one who was assigned to me, was the Assyriologist of the ancient history department, a fantastic man called Alistair Livingstone. And he was an amazing advisor. He was warm and funny and very, very welcoming. I lost count of how many times I just sat in his office drinking a cup of tea with him.
Lovely.
Yeah, amazing. And he was explaining usually some finer point of Zulu pronunciation, which went completely over my head.
Right? But why not? Let's just
exactly. Yeah. And one of those afternoons we were chatting, and he asked what I wanted to do after I graduated. And I said, well, I want to be an academic. I want to go into do a PhD and research. And he said, okay. And I specified I want to do classics. He said, okay, well, you could do that. You would do fantastically. Have you considered Assyriology though? Because, and this was his logic, and it was good logic. So many of the classical texts have been translated multiple times. We're not discovering a lot of new material, and Assyriology has so much stuff that needs working through.
Yeah.
And like we need people,
we need
just
people
like you, Megan, to do this kind of work in translation and research. So, I mean, this would be a good alternative if you felt that maybe classics wasn't the path you were looking for. And honestly, that sold me. So I stayed in Birmingham.
Right?
It's very practical, yes.
Already interested in the general realm. Why not give me some direction, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I stayed in Birmingham and did my first master's degree with him. Yeah.
Okay. So you get to, is the part of the name of Johns Hopkins?
It is, yeah.
Is that pretentious, or is that just me?
It's pretentious.
Okay.
I don't know why it's there. I'm sure there's a reason.
There is.
It's very strange.
I imagine there's an interesting story. When I saw today, it was the first time I paid attention to that. I'm like, how have I not known that before? That just feels weird. So you end up at the Johns Hopkins University and doing PhD work. You bump into this really lovely person that many of us love and appreciate, Josh Bowen, and that's a part of your life. But this is about you and your dissertation. And And I'm glad that you're kind of laughing and chuckling. Like that's why why I asked you ahead of
Mhm.
time, because I don't want to make a, but I'm not into drama. But I'm super curious. You got so close. Like,
Very close, yeah.
oh,
My advisor, when I left, my advisor said you probably have another 2 years. And then you could complete and be finished. So at the time, and the story that I've told myself and other people for years is that it got to the point where my mental health was suffering too much for me to continue,
okay.
which is true.
Okay.
And
I'm sorry.
Thank you. It took several years actually to really kind of unpack why my mental health was suffering that badly.
Yes.
So by the time I left in my 7th year. No, 7 years? I don't remember.
Okay.
Some years.
It's okay. Yep.
By the time I got to that point, Josh, so when we met, Josh was married to his first wife and had 2 children. And in the end of my 3rd year, he went to Germany, and while he was out there, he and his wife made the decision to divorce.
I didn't know that part.
And I'm sorry, that was a doorbell, and it means my daughter has forgot her key. I'll be back in like 30 seconds.
Let me see if I can catch up on some questions here while we're PhD work. This is a really interesting comment. Hello, Kip, by the way. It's so fun to see you here. It can be. Yeah, my literate. My own issue, my own thing about PhD work is more about the norms that are male defined. I was just trying to, look at some questions and comments while you're gone. Glad your daughter's okay.
ADHD is strong in this household. Someone will forget something.
I need to do just a random segue. I've seen pictures of you with of the 2 of you with 5 children, and I just assumed that you had pushed all 5 into the world. And I was like, holy.
It's a fair assumption.
Yeah, and that's a strong move for 2 academics. Okay, so now things look a little different. Okay, but anyway.
So we end up dating and moving in, and through a convoluted series of events, Josh ends up with custody of our two eldest children.
Okay.
Can't afford to keep them in Baltimore because I'm still a student. He's not quite graduated yet.
Yeah.
So we moved to Southern Maryland, which is where we are now, because Josh and actually Tara, his first wife, they're both from this area. They're a family here, so we ended up renting a house from his dad, actually, until Josh could find work and we could kind of start supporting ourselves properly. So all of this happens. I'm still actively writing my dissertation, and now also parenting a 10-year-old and a 3-year-old
who aren't your own children that you've raised to that point. So
which is a bit of a culture shock.
Yeah, I bet.
So I'm doing all of this, and then 2 years later, we decide that we would like to have children as well together. And I have our son, and start Digital Hammurabi. And then a year after, a year and a half maybe, I'm really struggling. This whole time I've been struggling to actually work, to write, to carve out the time that I need, because Piper is young enough. She's home with us all day. We can't afford daycare. Josh is working, so he's out all day.
You're trying to juggle those. Yeah.
Was not a good, those things do not go very well together.
No.
And there is zero institutional support. There's no like stipends for childcare. There's no, I mean, not that I could drive to Hopkins every day, but there's no, when on days where I have to go in, I have to find a friend willing to like sit with Piper in the university while I have my meetings.
Yeah.
There's no on-site daycare, like none of that exists.
Right.
So And there's also no, or there, it feels like there is very little understanding from the faculty that actually students who have children, who are primary parents, might need a little support.
Or a little like a little give and like a little bit of leeway with certain things.
A little. So I have a baby. Obviously, that isn't super conducive to PhD dissertation work either. Amazingly enough, I know it's shocking. It's really shocking. And because I'm in this country at this point, still I'm in the country on a student visa.
Right.
So I can't get maternity leave from the university because that voids my visa.
Really?
So yeah.
Okay. Right.
I have to be an
maternity leave. You're not a student, right? I was just thinking,
yeah,
not putting. Yeah. Okay.
So I'm trying kind of to do work while recovering from having a baby and breastfeeding a baby, which is exhausting.
Right.
Trying to do all of this stuff, and I'm exhausted and demoralized and demotivated and just feel awful. I'm not being the parent that I would like to be to any of the children because I'm constantly stressed.
Exactly.
And I'm not being the student that I know I can be. Because those two things are mutually exclusive.
Your attention is so divided. There's no, you need hours to like deep dive, like literally, like actually do just for people watching. Like you don't get to do 5 minutes here and 5 minutes there and come back an hour later and do 10 minutes. It doesn't work that way. You gotta have chunks of time.
Yeah. So all of this is going on. And in addition to that, the university, I mean, not unreasonably, puts an upper limit on the PhD process. So you have to graduate within 10 years.
Yes. Right.
Which doesn't seem ridiculous. For these kinds of research PhDs, actually 10 years is a realistic thing.
It is. But yeah, all things considered. Yeah.
Yes. So I'm not working as hard as I could or working as fast as I could because I have children. But the clock is also running down on my PhD time, and I'm just like constant state of overwhelm and panic. So I wake up. One evening I sat down and I said, I cannot do this anymore. I'm miserable. The children are miserable because I'm constantly stressed and upset and shouting.
Yeah.
I don't want to do this anymore. He said, you don't have to.
Right.
That's like, you are allowed to not do this anymore. And we went to bed, and I woke up the next morning and I just felt light.
Huge relief.
This massive sense of relief. I was like, okay, well, this is clearly the best decision I could make. So I went and had a meeting with my supervisor and said, I'm really sorry, I can't keep doing this. And I was quite anxious about this because I was his first PhD student. I felt like I was letting him down.
Right.
And he essentially said, don't hold yourself hostage to something that you wanted 5 years ago.
Yeah, that's what a lovely response.
Yeah. Which was fantastic. I was like, oh, I'm allowed to change what I want to do. That's okay. I'm not, there's a tendency in academia, and I think probably a lot of fields, you don't finish, you failed.
Right.
Yeah. And hearing someone say, essentially, it's not failing, you've just changed what you want and you're allowed to do that, was very, very validating.
Good.
And he sent me to speak to the head of postgraduate, I can't remember.
Relations.
So he was one of the Egyptology professors.
Okay.
Who was just in charge of the postgrads for that year. And he said, we can defer, you can essentially take 2 years leave of absence, because by the time I had this meeting, I'd actually managed to get a green card. So I wasn't reliant on the student visa. He said, you can take 2 years leave of absence and then come back. Essentially, we'll drop you right back in where you are right now. And I said, it's really kind of you. I know I want more children. 2 years is not going to, if I come back in 2 years, I'm probably going to be in the same position at home that I am right now. I'm going to have a nursing baby. I really appreciate the flexibility in the offer, but it's just not going to work. So that's how all of that played out. Since then, I also had an ADHD diagnosis, which explains like most of my life.
It tends to do that, doesn't it?
It really does. It really does.
Huge relief
So,
for people is what I've heard, right? You know, like, oh,
yeah.
this is, yeah, okay.
I'm not broken. I just work differently.
Right.
Yeah.
Just as I think, yes.
So I'm not sure it would have made much of a difference in terms of how, like, I'm not sure there would have been accommodations made, but I would have felt better as a student knowing, okay, the reason I can't memorize this is my brain, I don't have a good working memory. Like, medically speaking, it's impaired. It doesn't work. So that was really helpful. But the whole, I've dealt with a lot of anger and frustration and resentments, not aimed at specific individuals, but just the institution, the university as an institution.
Yeah.
Because while I was there, no fewer than 4 men with children graduated.
Oh, right.
Because they have wives at home looking after their kids.
Right.
And because they can go to functions because they have wives at home looking after their kids.
They can go network for jobs or whatever things that they could potentially work on.
And I don't for one second think it was a conscious thing, but it's academia. It's a thing.
Yeah.
I was the stay-at-home parents. I mean, mainly because Josh graduated first. He says, and I genuinely believe him, that he would have loved to have been a stay-at-home dad if I'd graduated first. He'd have done a great job. He would. Probably, he's much more patient than I am. So I'm a stay-at-home parent, and there was literally no wiggle room, no flexibility, no understanding that actually I have honestly more important commitments and more important claims on my time right now than school, because I'm raising small humans. And they can't do that by themselves.
They really
amazingly. I mean,
amazing.
I've told them they should. I mean, it would be much easier if they could, frankly. But so much of parenting when they're small is just making sure they don't run into traffic.
Yeah, right.
Or eat something that they shouldn't. Yeah, or like at the moment, our 3-year-old daughter is having a great time just physically attacking her twin. No. So like there has to be an adult there to physically separate them. Academia doesn't quite understand this. No. And there was very much the sense that, sorry, home life is like your thing. You have to deal with that separately. Now Hopkins did a couple of years ago, and I gave a video testimonial for this. A few years ago, they did have a massive review of their graduate student benefits, essentially, which included a big review on how they, driven by the student union, of course, a big review of how they accommodate students who are also parents. Nice. Because once you get to graduate education, you're at the stage in life where most people are marrying and having babies and stuff. It's not unreasonable to be doing this. It's just academia expects women in particular to just not do it.
Yeah.
So yes, I did a video testimonial for that, which was a lot of fun.
Was it?
Yeah, well, because I opened it very seriously by saying I failed. And after failing, these are all the things that I did, including like founding and running a charity that raised money for graduate students to use for childcare costs, running a YouTube channel with like at that point 50,000 subscribers, and all of this stuff that I am incredibly proud of, that I would never have done if I had stayed in academia. But then the thrust of my message was, what could I have done if you all had supported me when I needed it? And how great of an ambassador for Hopkins could I have been as a graduated PhD student doing all of this stuff?
Wow.
I enjoyed putting that together. It was very cathartic.
I bet it was. Yeah.
So yes,
well
that's kind of like the whole constellation of stuff. The ADHD, the parenting, the lack of supports.
Yeah.
All of this stuff kind of worked together to actually make me a very, very unhappy person in the last few years of my PhD.
Mhm.
And there was a culture, and there tends to be a culture in a lot of these institutions, that if you're not working every single hour you possibly can on the PhD, you don't want it badly enough, or
Right.
you're not dedicated enough.
You don't belong here.
Yes, which is a massively unhealthy way to do literally
Right.
anything. But for some reason it's okay in academia.
Right? I mean, it is, yes, it is stunning, the hours that graduate students will
Yeah.
put in, right?
Um,
I'm gonna throw this up
yeah,
really
so
quickly
we
because, thank you, Nathan Myers. We really are happy about Megan reproducing herself, right? The
they're
next
pretty cool
generation.
humans.
Yeah.
I say so myself.
What'd you say?
They're pretty cool humans. Small
Yes.
ones.
Yes, they are. The wee ones, the little ones. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing more of those details with us, because the way Josh summarized it, I was like, I don't like what you just said. It was summarized like she wanted to have kids. I'm like, nope, that's not it. That's not the full story. And I was like, I like you, Josh, so I'm just gonna not talk about it anymore. Ask Meg. Yeah, this is a bit more complex, and that all makes much more sense. He was saying, academia is just not fair to women. I'm like, well, I'll agree with you on that.
Yeah.
So I love that you, yeah, I love that you said that I failed, and yet here I am doing so many things I'm really proud of, that you couldn't, it comes from your time learning as a student, right?
Mm-hmm.
I did notice on the Digital Hammurabi page that it said that you might, someone asked about Minerva earlier. Hang on. When Barley came in, they said, "Where's Minerva?" Because she's my one that normally comes in also.
Oh, she's lovely.
Isn't she fun? Yeah, she's my pretty girl.
Hello, pretty girl.
Yeah. That you might try to go back to finish. Is that even still on the table, or is it? I mean, there's always with a family, right? There's always these high demands.
I don't know. For the longest time I wanted to, because I've put so much work into it. I have 3/4 of a dissertation sitting on my hard drive.
Yes. The world should see the work you've done.
But thinking now about going back
Yeah.
and going through all of that, obviously it wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't be doing it the same way again. But
Right.
I don't know if I want to, and I don't know if I personally need to for me.
Good.
When I left, I was very much, I'm going to finish one day for myself because I want to. I don't know that I want to anymore.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Maybe when the children are out of the house and I have some more spare time, I'll write a dissertation and give it a go. But it's not important to me right now.
And the extra whatever by your name or the association isn't necessary. Is that? I mean, that's part of
because it's funny. Alt academia is kind of looked down on by a lot of career academics,
right?
And if I'm going to be looked down on by people who would have otherwise been peers and colleagues, you know what? I don't need it. I'm good. I'm making more of a difference with my silly little YouTube channel and reaching more people with the now 3 podcasts I host than they probably will in most of their careers. So you know what?
Yeah.
Okay, I failed. That's fine. I'm happier.
I'm proud
so
to have failed. That's what it means that I'm doing this. Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate that comment about the being looked that alt, is that what you called it? Alt academia? Public scholarship, whatever. There's a difference.
There is, and there's the tide is starting to shift. When we first started doing this, I remember presenting it at a conference and hearing afterwards from someone who had a podcast but was told to stop it when she went up for tenure because that time could have been spent writing academic work. It was a waste of her professional time. And there are still people who think like that, but there are also a lot of people, especially early career researchers, but also people like yourself, like Bart Ehrman, Francesca, who do see value in this kind of work and think it's incredibly important. So it is changing. There are a lot of people who think similarly to us, but institutionally, I don't think the change is there yet.
Definitely not. Definitely not. And I, you know, yeah, I've had some interactions recently in social media with people who are just very, you know, entrenched in as scholars, biblical scholars in whatever institution they're part of, but just no mental space for, you know, what we're trying to do here.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate, I appreciate you bringing that up. You said it very nicely. The way these realms are perceived. That why would you want to have a label or an identifier that makes you a part of that club when that club doesn't understand you or even maybe appreciate you in the way that we would like to. Yeah. I respect that. I appreciate you taking time to talk about this. Yeah, I do. You said you run 3 podcasts. So you have Digital Hammurabi, Misquoting Jesus, and what's
the third is called the Reading Party Podcast, which is a media review podcast with my friend Lexi, who is host of the Osmandius Project Office Hours podcast.
I think I need you to repeat some of that. I either didn't understand or I was just not tracking. So what's it called? So
it's called the Reading Party Podcast.
The Reading Party. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm glad I asked you to back up on that one. The Reading Party Podcast. So, okay. It meant to sound political in a playful way?
No, just it's a media review. So we read and watch TV and books and stuff that are either inspired by or set in the ancient world. And my co-host is a classicist. And she runs her own couple of podcasts as well, actually. And it started during the pandemic because we were working on some other stuff together. And I mentioned, I think, that I hadn't sat down and probably read a book for years because graduate scholarship will kill the joy of reading.
And also the time, not having the time to do it.
And the upshot of that conversation was, well, why don't we start another podcast together? Fantastic. I have so much time. We should absolutely do that. So we did. And we're about to start recording our 4th season, which is on heroes and monsters. So we're going to be looking at, I think, a Gilgamesh adaptation, a bunch of Alexander the Great stuff, Disney's Hercules, and we get guests on to help us talk about these things as well. So yeah, it's fun.
I imagine it is, and I will just say a lot of work. Any one of the ones you're running, right, is a decent part-time job in and of itself, right? So you're doing 3 of those, maintaining website, all those kinds of things. Yeah, I'm impressed. I love that you just did that, though, right? An interest, and you made a way to make it work. Yeah.
It was a good choice.
Yeah, good. Well, I'm glad you think so. Yeah, I'm just gonna. I have been just enjoying our conversation and not looking out at what people are saying. Okay, I do. It is fun, the kinds of things people get into in the chat here. So I tend to do I talk with Megan or do I look back for comments, because I'm sure there are other things I could ask her right now. Okay, so I did share links to your things. If so I was going to ask you what you're working on or what you're interested in right now, but I think there's probably just that, right, the content for your podcast. Is there a particular
interest? I'm not really doing my own research at the moment. That requires too much concentration, honestly.
Concentrated time.
So I'm doing a lot to try and get more consistent content out with Digital Hammurabi.
Gotcha.
That definitely suffered over the pandemic, and then having twins. Whose idea it was to have 2 of them, I don't know. But I'm blaming my mother. We ended up with 2. And they're a delight, but they're a lot. So finally getting back into regular, consistent interviews. We've also started doing courses. So Josh is teaching Hebrew, Sumerian, and what else is he? He's doing another one. No, 2 Hebrew classes. He's got intro to Hebrew and then advanced Hebrew and then introduction to Sumerian. And we have an Assyriology friend teaching Mesopotamian astronomy. I just had a call this morning with an Egyptologist who is going to put together a proposal for teaching, I think, disability in the ancient worlds.
Oh, nice.
In like the winter, maybe, depends on his schedule. And then another friend is going to teach like Egyptian religion, but like the daily life of Egyptian religion.
Nice.
So there's a lot of, I don't have to do the research for that, but I do all of the like the administration side of things. So getting the course pages set up and putting all the relevant information in there and emailing everyone and all of that stuff. So most of my time at the moment is setting things up so that they run smoothly. With minimal input. And yeah, just interviewing interesting people. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Can I ask, who is it that's going to be doing the disabilities in the?
It's called Kyle Jordan.
Okay, I'm a handful of folks that do that work I'm familiar with, but he's not one of them. So yeah, just curious. Yeah. And this might be something you do not want to respond to, which is totally fine. But I am curious. First of all, I need to just, this is random. You have gotten rid of a lot of the color in your presentation. Your hair is all one, is colorful. Your glasses are not. I was like, oh, did she think she needed to be serious?
Oh, no. The hair is taking a break.
Okay.
Partly because it needed it. But also because of the ADHD, I need to be in a very specific mood to sit down and take 2 hours to dye my hair.
Understood.
I've not been in that mood for a while, so we're just rolling with it. And the glasses are because my bright glasses pinch the sides of my face. Or the bright glasses I have the correct prescription for me at the moment pinch the sides of my face. So I just didn't feel like wearing them.
Okay.
It's not a permanent change.
That's a total tangent, but I just felt like asking. Okay. I am curious what your dissertation work was on. Are you at all open to talking about it? Or do you, I imagine you have channeled quite a bit of that into the work you've presented. Why are you giggling?
Not a massive amount, actually. It was, so I was working on royal inscriptions in Mesopotamia. Like for like the whole of Mesopotamia, there are a lot of royal inscriptions.
That's a wide range too.
So I wasn't, they've all, or most of them have been translated by fantastic philologists. It wasn't a translation project. What I was doing was trying to reconnect the text of the inscription with the object the inscription was placed upon, and then where that object was found and where it was used. Not always the same place. So I made a very big database with 700 plus objects, detailing what the object itself is, like size, composition, all that exciting stuff, if it was a statue or a pot or whatever. Which inscription it had, because a lot of these things or individual inscriptions are found on multiple objects. So you can have like 5 different objects that all have the same inscription. So then you can kind of go into the database and look at, okay, well, this particular inscription was found on these objects, but then also where those objects themselves were found, if they were in the same city, the same building, the same room, and if there was anything notable. And this information can be quite difficult to track down. Sometimes doesn't exist. But what other objects were found, like if it was buried, what other objects were found buried with it? Was it found in a primary context? So for people who are not archaeologically trained, primary context would be where it was intended, like the place it was made to inhabit originally. Secondary context, so if it was moved from that place, or a tertiary context would be something like a trash pit, or as building fill, so used for the foundation of a building. So recording all of that information and then looking and seeing if there were any interesting patterns, then noting those patterns down, coming up with theories as to what like models for that would explain that information, essentially. And I was at that very last stage.
Okay.
When I left,
Drawing a whole bunch of conclusions about what what you've been
Yeah.
compiling and paying very close attention to, detailed attention to.
And one of the really interesting things that I found, and I don't remember a lot because it's been so long since I looked at it, but I do remember that a lot of the inscriptions, if they were building inscriptions, so commemorating the construction of a specific building, a surprising amount of them were not in that building that they commemorated.
Oh,
Sometimes they weren't even in the same city.
What?
Mm-hmm.
What is that about? Do people steal the thing as part of their
No.
trophy for conquering, or?
No, because a lot of the times they were in buildings that were probably either built by the same king or renovated by him.
Huh. Do you have a conclusion about that? Like, do you have any ideas? No, you don't know what that's about.
No, I didn't get that far. It's interesting though.
Very. Yeah. Huh.
Yes, that Kyle. I cannot hear you. That might, let me just check my earbud isn't suddenly died. Nope, I still got it. Oh, it's just me. Hi, everyone. I hope she comes back.
Okay, can you hear me?
Aha! Yes.
Okay. Sorry, there's something weird going on, obviously.
I usually mute myself while I'm interviewing someone. At least, like, it's very common for me to start entire shows absolutely completely muted. And I'm sitting here gesticulating and giving my introduction, and everyone's like, Megan, we can't hear you.
Thank you. That's very, very kind of you to offer. Is this the Kyle Jordan?
Yep, that's the Kyle Jordan.
Oh, yep. Cool. Lovely that we're giving a little promo for him coming up.
He's really awesome.
Lovely. Okay, cool. I'm just sharing a few things here because I do want to respect your time. This would be the time if anyone has any direct questions for Megan to throw those in there. Mostly, yes, I see in the chat. Mostly, I'm just trying to give some love here. So very thankful for your scholarship, activism, and public personae. Yeah, the work you did supporting female graduate students, is that what it was? And
it was any graduate student in like the broad field of the ancient Near East could apply, but the thing about the grant was that we didn't put any strings on it. You had to come and do an interview, and then you had to do like report back and say how your funded summer went, but the money could be used for childcare, transport costs, rents, food, like literally whatever you felt you needed the money for. Yeah.
I love that, and I remember hearing about when that kind of had to wrap up. We won't get into that. Yeah. Okay. Oh, maybe a dedicated comment reading time per 20. Oh, someone commenting on how, from chat to guest would be like trying to earn a degree. Ha ha ha. Right. My comments about I'd rather just focus on you instead of focusing on the chat, but it is fun when there's something fun that people have asked or commented on. So as you well know, I don't need to explain that to you. So yes, what a lovely comment from Harris. Thank you for your honesty and well done standing up for your mental health. Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Megan. Yes, we'll call you doctor anyway. That's in my mind.
Occasionally I'll get emails like addressing me as Dr. Megan, and I'm always like, no.
Right. For those who have,
it's very kind, but no.
Done the defense and all the things it matters. But Megan, thank you for being here today.
It's been a delight. I don't normally I get quite anxious about being on this side of the interview, but I enjoyed talking to you so much when I interviewed you. I was like, this is going to be fun. I'm not worried about this at all. It's going to be great. And I've really loved it. So thank you.
Oh, thank you for saying that. Thank you for saying that, Megan. Yes, it's been a delight to have you here. I know you can tell from the chat that people who were able to be here with us enjoyed hearing part of your story. And so thank you for sharing all those bits with us. And I think we're going to wrap up here. I'm going to kick you out and we'll chat in just a minute. All right. So thank you all for all of you who are here with us live, enjoying each other, a little banter together, enjoying listening to Megan and hearing more about her. Oh my goodness, somebody just referenced grammar and I wanted to respond to it. I'm like, okay, no, we're going to focus. Okay. So thank you. This has been story time. Thanks for being here with us. Thank you for the ways that you support me and the work I'm doing here. If you're interested, you can, I do have a Patreon account and a memberships in my YouTube channel, if you're interested in supporting me in that kind of way. But otherwise, thank you for being here. We're going to close this out and appreciate the super sticker. And I will be back next week doing more reading through the Book of Acts. Take care.